Well, you've heard Big Brother is watching you. That's okay. You're probably watching Big Brother too. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com who are watching us now, Bill, I imagine. This is a story out of TheIntercept.com based on some leaked documents, a cache of materials referred to as blue leaks that came from Anonymous, the famous Anonymous, whoever thought you could become famous for being anonymous, but it came from him through a group called Distributed Denial of Secrets. And essentially it's a November 2019, a couple of documents from the FBI evaluating the strengths and weaknesses, or the pluses and minuses, of people who have these Ring doorbells or cameras mounted on their homes. And while on the positive side, the FBI evaluation and other police would say that it makes it possible for police to get video from willing homeowners to review previous incidents, the negative side is that if they're planning to search your house, you might see them coming. Bill, is this something where we, as conservatives who believe in law and order, need to find a way to give police control of those cameras so that if they're going to execute a raid or a search, the perp doesn't see them approaching?
I have every right to see who's coming onto my property, and if I could detect somebody that was on the way to my property an hour in advance, I'd like that a lot. The entire idea is ridiculous. If there is in fact any policeman actually complaining about this, the idea that you have some warning that they're coming to your house to search your house. If somebody's coming to my house to search my house, they're going to have to provide a search warrant, and that's the end of that. So what are they saying? Are they saying that these cameras allow the people that have them to see that a policeman's coming up the driveway and give them enough chance to flush drugs down the toilet? Surely the knock on the door, answered by who is it? Answered by the police, answered by do you have a warrant? Answered by yes, we do. Answered by I'll be right back. I think the whole thing's just completely specious.
Well, and keep in mind that the law enforcement still sees these cameras as a net positive, but this is just kind of evaluating the potential risks or consequences of a growing number of people. In fact, people in 4 countries, including the U.S. and the U.K. and Germany, that would have what they would consider to be smart homes with these IoT devices, Internet of Things devices. About 30% of those have these cameras. Here's an example in this document from a 2017 incident in New Orleans where a homeowner who was not home at the time saw the police coming and actually phoned a neighbor and phoned the landlord to let them know about the law enforcement action. And according to the FBI report, and this is a quote, the subject was able to see and hear everything that was happening at his residence.
Good. What's the problem?
I thought it was an odd sentence. It's like, I like it when I know what's going on at my residence.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this, just briefly, just flew into my head, is that this is a great example of the difference, just the fundamental difference between private property and public property. I don't want to be recorded in public. I don't think we should have cameras recording everything in public like they do in Great Britain. And to those people say that, well, certainly doesn't help prevent crimes, but it might help you find the perpetrators. A small price to pay, I think, relatively speaking, in a relatively peaceful society like ours, to be able to say, well, we caught a few people because we were videotaping everybody. I think that's a repulsive way to live. That said, that's public property. On private property, the idea that I might have a device that's recording everybody coming to my door, including people that may be coming to rip off Donald Trump signs or plant, flaming bags of dog poop on the porch or whatever, seems to me like a perfectly reasonable thing to have. And the ability for me to see who's coming to my door while I'm not there is something else that I think is just great. And I agree with you. What a ridiculous thing to say. Apparently, the person was able to figure out and listen directly to what was happening at his own house.
Well, and these cameras are capturing a lot more than that, Bill, as you know. They're not just capturing people coming to your door. Some of these cameras are in a position to catch, a wide angle of everything happening around your property, including people walking by on the sidewalk and what's going on in the neighbor's house across the street.
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on, you don't get both. I mean, a camera that's capable of determining what's going on in a neighbor's house across the street has got a very narrow field of view and is absolutely useless.
I'm not saying in the house. I should say at the house.
Look, these cameras are non-intrusive to the degree that they show me what I can see if I look out the window, right? These cameras are not showing me anything that I can't see if I look out the window. So to say that this is an intrusion on my neighbor's privacy because the camera sees what I can see by looking out the window, I think is a pretty thin argument. Now, if you're talking about a camera that had a telephoto lens or something like that, that's a whole different story. If you had a camera that was in a tree or something that was looking down into somebody's backyard, also a different story. But a camera that records wide-angle lens from the door that is essentially just showing you what you would see if you either opened the door or look out the window, I don't see any harm in that. My wife and I go walking around our neighborhood late at night often, and we will often walk past a house and a motion sensor gets triggered and a light comes on, and it seems to me that's not an unreasonable precaution for somebody to take in their own property. It certainly doesn't bother me, but I've also never had the sense that I was being watched as I walked through my neighborhood.
Well, actually, I've had that sense before. You just reminded me of an incident that happened. I used to go and take a walk, and when I walked, I would take my camera with me. I have a little DSLR camera, and typically I would take pictures of rabbits and pretty flowers and interesting scenes, ducks, and things like that I saw on the way. There's a neighborhood network, an app called Nextdoor. And on the neighborhood network, my wife saw an alert that said, "Hey, has anybody seen that guy walking around taking pictures of people's properties?" And I had to actually post pictures of rabbits so that they could see what I was all about. But it's an interesting world we live in, Bill, because now it used to be like, especially in inner city areas, and it is to a certain extent, it's almost like a prison because they've got cameras on every angle in many of these downtown areas. But now it's not just Big Brother watching us. I mean, I've got a private camera that I can use to observe other people. Where does this end?
At the boundary of your own property. I mean, again, this is the part of this discussion that I find just illuminating, is that on your property, you have a right to know what's going on your property, and your right to be able to see what's going on ends at your property line. And as I say, it ends at your ability to look out the window. We have to come up with what is a reasonable expectation of privacy. And I think my definition of a reasonable expectation of privacy, which I have thought a great deal about for all of, 7 or 8 seconds now, I guess, would be that I would expect that if I am in my house and the front windows are drawn, the curtains are drawn, no one should be able to see what I'm doing. I have a right to expect that if I've got a backyard with nobody back there, I should be able to have those windows open and also have nobody see what I'm doing. But to pretend that you should be able to just basically stand naked in front of your front door window and have anybody who either looks at you or photographs you, considering that an invasion of your privacy, just light doesn't work that way. And again, this is a question of where is your domain? At what point does your domain begin and end? And your domain, in terms of your privacy and your ability to determine your right to determine what's going on outside of the wall I'm behind, begins and ends the limit of your private property. And that seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Let's say you have one of these cameras on your door, either one of those little doorbells or they little mounted cameras, and the police come to you and they knock at your door or they call you and they say, "Hey, listen, there's been a guy going around robbing cars in the area, checking for open doors and breaking into cars and stealing things from them. Could you give us all the video that your camera has produced, any motion captures that it's done over the past 2 weeks?" Do you have any qualms with that, Bill? Do you immediately turn that over, or do you want to know more?
That's a great question. I think I would have a problem with it being coercive. In fact, I know. I would have a problem with it being coercively taken from me. If somebody asked me for their cooperation in that respect, I would give it serious thought. I'd probably want to look at the tape first. But yeah, I mean, if it turns out that that's one of the advantages of these things. It provides video evidence to go after the bad guys. And there are bad guys. And I want bad guys in my neighborhood. I want people stealing cars in my neighborhood. I want people smashing windows or taking lawn signs or any of the rest of it.
Porch pirates, they call them, that take your packages.
Yeah, plus that, exactly. So if I'm able to record video evidence that helps law enforcement to apprehend these people and prosecute them, I'm more than happy to help. But I don't want the state to be able to coercively force me to do anything I don't want to do. And this is, I think, a great example of this. I think this is, in fact, I think this is the perfect balance. I think that's the perfect answer to this question. Would you be willing to help us, perhaps find evidence or use evidence that can be used in prosecuting this criminal who's been raiding the neighborhood? Let me think that over for a minute. Yes. Hold on. No. Solved.
So you're accused or suspected of doing something wrong, Bill, and the police come to you and they say, we need to establish your whereabouts during a 48-hour period when we suspect there were some crimes being committed around here. We'd like to have all of the motion capture video from your camera at that in that time period because we want to see where you were.
The only reason you would need to know about my whereabouts is if you suspected me of committing a crime. And if you suspect me of committing a crime, it is on your shoulders. The burden of responsibility is on you, not on me, to show where I was or wasn't. The burden of proof is on you to show where I was. Otherwise, you have no business knowing where I was. So the answer is go pound sand. Now, if a situation emerges where for some reason or another, somebody claims to have evidence or whatever, and I choose to use that evidence from my own video camera as a form of an alibi. That's up to me, but I have no obligation to tell the police or the state where I haven't been. If they suspect me of a crime, it's up to them to prove that I was there and that I did it. And if they can't, then I am innocent until proven guilty. Quaint concept, used to be quite the thing here in this country. And so once again, none of this stuff seems particularly hard to me. It all just seems pretty much common sense. Yeah.
Since this one's so easy, final question is: people walking past my property, if I have one of these cameras, what expectation of privacy do they have that they are not being videotaped and captured and stored on my cloud service? Do you think I am obligated to put up a sign that says this premises is under video surveillance?
That's a better question.
Finally, I got a good question.
It's just a little tougher to deal with, but I don't think it's really that hard either. I don't think you have an obligation to put this property under video surveillance for the reason that, again, it comes down to just basic common sense, right? If you walk, I have a field of view out of the front windows in the house, and I can see 90 degrees forward and 20 degrees on either side or something like that out of the windows. And anything that happens in that field of view is visible to me looking out the window. Since it's visible to me looking out the window, it's also visible to my iPhone. If I happen to be taking a picture of the back of my window and you're walking by, I get a picture of you. And so I don't think you have the right to privacy walking down the street to the extent of no one can take your picture when you walk by. Certainly no one would claim, I don't think any reasonable person could claim, that they have a right to be able to walk in front of my house and have me not take a picture of them when they go by. But this is the important distinction here now. The important distinction is that that's different than walking down a neighborhood where you are being recorded from several angles 24/7 nonstop by a single agency. If I were to have a number of cameras placed around my neighborhood and I had video surveillance of what everybody was doing in the neighborhood at any given time, that would be an egregious violation of other people's rights.
Ring has that. Ring, which is a subsidiary of Amazon, they have all of our cameras that are part of their network, and they could, if they chose to. My understanding is that at least one occasion they turned over what they described as a camera heat map to police, but they could turn over that. Do you think I should have a say if Ring decides to turn over what's being recorded on its network?
Absolutely, you should have a say. Yeah. Because if you don't, if this is part of the terms of agreement or whatever those things are, I forgot what those three initials are.
17 pages of 6-point
the thing you always
type.
check, check, yes, I get. But if you, terms of service, I guess, if you agree if you agree that I'm going to put in I'm going to have a camera or maybe even a series of surveillance cameras installed, and some other agency has access to them either in real time or without my written consent, then I have conspired to put a spy network into my own neighborhood, and I kind of deserve what's coming to me, I think. I don't think they have any right to that information whatsoever. They're not selling me a security service. They're not ADT. ADT, now, if you want to talk about a security service that you're paying a large amount of money for so that you have professionals monitoring TV cameras, that's a different story. You're aware of that. But if you're telling me that I buy a camera that records what is being seen on the internet, what is being seen at my front door, sends it up to the internet so I can check it every time. I know it's naive of me to assume that this isn't happening, but if it turns out that people who sold those cameras are recording that data 24/7, then I think it's time we had a little discussion. And now you start talking about interesting things like jammers, you know? I mean, seriously, if we're really talking about things like that, then I think there must be a market for some kind of jammer.
You okay with the police having such a jammer?
Pardon me?
Are you okay with the police having such a jammer so when they approach your property, they can actually cloud your camera or take it offline?
I'm not talking about clouding the camera. I'm talking about, because then the whole system's useless. You might as well just not have one. I'm talking about something that jams the ability for that camera to transmit signals. And there are some people that have talked about or had discussions about GPS scramblers that basically they don't really turn the GPS off so much as throw the thing off by quarter mile or something like that. But these are interesting questions that we have to deal with in the 21st century. And the nice thing about it is that regardless of the level of technology or the individual piece of technology, the principles behind them are pretty much the same. I have a right to privacy in my own home. I have a right to know what's going on my own property, even if I'm not there. The police have a right to search my house if they can prove probable cause in front of a judge and obtain a search warrant. And this, generally speaking, there have been plenty of egregious examples of overuse and overreach, but we're imperfect people living in an imperfect world. As a general rule, this works really well. That doesn't give them the right to monitor what I'm doing, doesn't give me the right to monitor what's going on beyond the bounds of my property. But again, all of this stuff just seems pretty common sense to me. If I'm walking in front of somebody's house and I am upset about the fact that they may be recording me on video, well, they could be photographing me. They could be peeping out of their windows at me, and they often do. That's the part of it that I find most disturbing, to be honest with you, is walking down the street late at night and just seeing those curtains just close and people switching off the lights as I go by. It's annoying. But that's what I do when I go out in public on the street. And having individual people having the ability to see what's going on and directly in front of their property is not the same as a wide area network of multiple cameras that allows the state to watch what everybody's doing, because that is an intelligence gathering service. I have no intelligence on anything that happens to somebody when they walk 5 degrees outside of my property in either way. And to me, that seems like a pretty reasonable balance between privacy, security, and situational awareness.
I'm pretty sure those curtains snap shut when you walk by because they've received the memo that one is not to make eye contact with Mr. Whittle. Ladies and gentlemen.
Everybody in the neighborhood has to sign that NDA or else they don't get to move in.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful to the members at BillWhittle.com.
And no brown M&Ms either.
Who have made this program possible. If you'd like to join them, you can go to BillWhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.